I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, March the 21st, 2016. The bodies of the 3 Israeli citizens killed in a suicide bombing in Turkey this weekend were flown yesterday back to Israel for burial on 2 special IDF planes. 60-year-old Simcha Dimri, 40-year-old Yonatan Suher, and 69-year-old Avraham Goldman died, and 11 Israelis were hurt, 2 of them critically, when a terrorist blew himself up on Istiklal Kadisi, a busy pedestrian street in Istanbul on Saturday. Suher and Goldman were also U.S. citizens. The injured were also flown back to Israel for continued treatment. The attack also killed an Iranian national and injured over 24 more people. Turkey identified the bomber, who was also killed in the attack, as an Islamic State-linked Turkish national named Mehmet Öztürk. A Turkish television channel claims that Öztürk had specifically targeted the Israelis, who were part of a tour group, following them from their hotel and waiting outside a restaurant while they had breakfast before detonating himself. The Israeli government was said to be investigating whether there was any validity to that report. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told his weekly cabinet meeting today that it was still unclear whether the Israelis were the intentional victims. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, meanwhile, sent a letter of condolences to Israeli President Reuven Rivlin yesterday over the deaths and called the attack inhumane. Relations between Israel and Turkey have been greatly strained over the last several years, and the letter from Erdogan was the first official correspondence from him to an Israeli president since 2009. In other news, the National Policy Conference of the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee kicked off last night in Washington with an address from U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. Biden told the thousands gathered in the Verizon Center Sports Arena that Israelis and Palestinians must move forward towards peace. Biden spoke of his recent visit to Israel and the attack committed by a Palestinian terrorist that occurred close to his family in the city of Jaffa, saying there is no legitimate excuse for terrorism. At the same time, Biden expressed some criticism of Israel's continued building of Jewish settlements in the West Bank, saying they hurt peace efforts. The vice president also spoke about the BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement against Israel. He said no nation is immune from criticism, but it should not be singled out. Biden said we will continue to stand against biased resolutions and attempts to delegitimize Israel at the United Nations. He also said the government, quote, will continue to push back against the calls by people here in the United States to boycott, divest from, or sanction Israel. JBS will bring you a live telecast from the AIPAC Policy Conference coming up right after this newscast this evening. After several complaints over the last few months from the Israeli government, Time magazine has corrected an article reporting about a terror attack in Jerusalem last year. On October the 13th, 22-year-old Baha Allyan was one of 2 Palestinian terrorists who boarded a bus in East Talpiot and proceeded to stab and shoot the passengers on board, leaving 3 people dead and more than a dozen injured. Time reported on the attack in an article titled "The Desperation Driving Young Palestinians to Violence," referring to Allyan as a graphic designer who, quote, was killed by Israeli security forces after allegedly trying to carry out an attack in Jerusalem. It did not mention the violent attacks committed by Allyan or the deaths of the passengers. After months of requests from the Israeli government press office, who said the piece, quote, ignored the victims and humanized the attacker, Time editors clarified on its website on Saturday that Allyan had been shot after carrying out the deadly attack and added that 3 people had been killed as a result of his actions. The victims killed in the October attack were 78-year-old Chaviv Chaim, 51-year-old Alon Govberg, and 76-year-old Richard Lakin, who died about 2 weeks after he sustained critical injuries. Some of the last remaining Jews in Yemen were airlifted to Israel yesterday in a secret operation coordinated by the Jewish Agency with help from the U.S. State Department. The 19 people were the final group of some 200 Yemenite Jews that have been brought to Israel over the last few years, part of a historic rescue mission. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise in Yemen as it deals with a civil war. Chairman of the Jewish agency, Natan Sharansky, said this chapter in the history of one of the world's oldest Jewish communities is coming to an end. But Yemenite Jewry's unique 2,000-year-old contribution to the Jewish people will continue in the State of Israel. And taking a look now at our programming for later tonight, Monday, March the 21st, at 9 o'clock, the Wall Street Journal's Bret Stephens talks about the primary elections, the ongoing nuclear threat posed by Iran, and his own Jewish identity. At 10 o'clock, Jewish Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer talks about his experiences with journalist Linda Greenhouse. And coming up right after this newscast tonight, we go to our live telecast from the AIPAC National Policy Conference in Washington, D.C., featuring 4 presidential primary candidates, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and John Kasich, with JBS anchors Mark S. Golub and Thane Rosenbaum. That's coming up next. And that's the JBS News Update for Monday, March the 21st, 2016. I'm Teisha Bader.